know, this isn't really fair. I've been trying to complete my Bleach manga collection the past few days, so I've been doing a lot of ordering off of Amazon, right? And I ordered the entire, every volume in the Fullbring arc, because I only owned one of them. And as luck would have it, the chapter where Ginjo and Tsukishima both reappear in the canon of the manga, and they both have volume covers, and how great it would be to put them right up here next to me as visual aids. I'm talking about the chapters. Of course, I received volume 53 with Yukio, and volume 51 with Riruka. Whoop-dee shit, right? Well, I guess Yukio still kind of appears in this chapter very briefly, so I guess I can throw him up there. As for Riruka, I don't give a shit. Although, I have to say one thing that's always been kind of perplexing to me. Okay, look at this volume cover of Riruka. Alright, really look at it. Do her boobs look way bigger than they are in the actual... Okay, I'm gonna stop. I know, pervert teching. Okay, let's do this. Bleach, chapter 681! The End of Two Worlds. I'm sorry, I mean the End to World. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he meant the end of Two Worlds, but okay, so, chapter continues on where we left off. We have Ichigo passed out. Well, he's not passed out, but he's just kind of like pretty depressed, I would say. Spirit kind of a little bit broken there. He's lying prostrate on the ground. Orihime's knocked out. And we had Ruki and Renji arriving in the scene as Yuha, you know, he's the one that delves into this, you know, this big foreboding speech. Like, I'm going to leave this gate open and you can walk through. But if you do, I'm going to kill you in the worst way imaginable. See ya! So then he begins to walk through the gate. Of course, Renji, being Renji, ain't having none of this shit. Okay, come on, think, Renji. You trained at the Soul Palace. Okay, he's a god, so... Alright, that probably won't work. That probably won't work. You suck at Kido. Oh, fucking hell! Zabimaru! Oh, Renji, Don't even bother. Oh my god, that is depressing. That one scene right there where you see Ichigo on the ground and he's just like, all life has been drained out of his eyes, okay? And I'm sure that's not just from the fact he had his powers sucked out by Yuha. It's just Ichigo has completely given up hope, okay? You know, he's just on the ground like, there's no point, Renji. Don't even bother. You can't win, buddy. Alright, so Zabimaru extends directly toward Yuha, and of course, as we've seen with Yuha's abilities of being able to break pretty much anything that enters his purview, and his almighty power, which allows him to see all signs at once, even though he is not looking directly at Zabimaru, it just completely shatters apart right before it's about to hit him, like it hits like an invisible force field. The wires of Zabimaru break apart, the little bone part in the center gets shattered, and Zabimaru's segments, you know, are dispersed around the area. Very similar to the Higazeko attack that he used against Aizen that one time, and against Gezel in the Bounce arc, you know, where he doesn't use it anymore, and for good reason. It's kind of like a one-and-done sort of thing. He can only use it once a day, I think, but like it breaks Zabimaru's segments all up into different parts, and he can like control them individually. But yeah, all the segments are broken, and Yuha just kind of like grabs one of them, and he's just like, oh, is this yours? I'm sorry, I don't want trash in my new world, and he just chucks it back out of him, and then Renji just looks on like, oh... You know, there's really no reason I should have thought that would have worked, but, damn, man, you don't break my sword like that. So we get the title page, then we cut over to see what's going on with Haschwalth and Uryu's fight. Now, last chapter we had the holy selection light break through the ceiling and completely engulf, well, it seemed like it engulfed Haschwalth and Uryu, because they were kind of like Haschwalth was looming over him, about to delve the finishing blow, and Uryu was below him, so we didn't really get an idea, like, who actually got affected, if it was both of them or just one of them. It turns out it was actually just Haschwalth that got afflicted by the holy selection light. Why? Well, Haschwalth does come up with an explanation, but it's kind of bullshit, so, yeah, we'll get to that. Now, Uryu is still heavily battle damaged from their fight, but he just kind of looks on disheartened, because I think he knows what happened there. And he also has to feel like a little bit of pity for Haschwalth, because remember, this is how Uryu lost his mother. You know, Katagiri died after Yuha did his holy selection. You know, Katagiri got knocked into a coma, and that's eventually how his mother died. So the same shit happens to Haschwalth, and you know, Uryu is a pretty honorable guy, so it's like the idea that their fight ended without him actually winning. It was like by some third party, history, and it was supposed to be the leader of Haschwalth. Haschwalth's like the one man he trusted the most. Yuha was the one that eventually ended up killing him at the end of the day. So Haschwalth collapses on the ground, and he's just looking at him like, oh, what did you think, that I would feel betrayed by Yuha taking my powers away? Well, it's just the opposite. I take pride in it. Pride especially that His Majesty found your power unfitting to steal. Oh, okay, so he found Uryu's power unfitting to steal. That's interesting. You know, it's funny, because a few chapters ago, Haschwalth said this. Your power might actually be the only power capable of matching His Majesty. Your power was unfit to steal by Yuha, so you still have it. Hey guys, do you possibly think that Uryu still having his antithesis power is going to play any role in the final battle with Yuha? I can't tell because the foreshadowing is so fucking subtle. Now, I know there's an argument to say that he didn't steal Uryu's power just because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't. Because remember, Uryu's escaped Yuha's holy selection before. Because 9 years ago, when he did the Swollen and, you know, Katagiri and Masaki got afflicted by it, Uryu was alive, he was a child, and he was an impure Quincy too. So I think Yuha even said, you know, like, you managed to evade me back then, because you're like the last Quincy, chosen to be my successor, blah, blah, blah. So I think it's more likely that he just couldn't steal his power, because if Yuha has reached the end game where it's just like, I don't even need Haschwalth anymore, who's like his other half, you know, if he doesn't even need him anymore, then it's the end game, and there's no reason why he wouldn't have stolen Uryu's power unless he couldn't. So that's a better way of putting it out there. But it's very blatantly obvious that that's going to play a crucial role in taking down Yuha. But Haschwalth does not feel regret or betrayed by Yuha. In fact, it's the exact opposite. He looks at it like he chose to steal my power and take it back into himself because only I am capable of being an asset to His Majesty. Oh my god. You know, I feel like Haschwalth kind of has like battered wife syndrome or something at this point. It's just like, yeah, he stole my powers, but it's only because he loves me the most and I'm the most asset to him. You know, it's like Haschwalth's looking around, right? Haschwalth has to see the fucked up shit Yuha has done. The fact that all the Sternritters are nothing more than just pawns in his masterful chess game. Alright? And Haschwalth in that system would be like the king or the queen, like one of the most valuable pieces, but he's still just a piece. Yuha's the one playing the damn game, okay? And so it's kind of sad when I look at this scene and it's like, Haschwalth's like, yeah, I know he treats the other Sternritter like garbage, just means to an end, but I'm special, I'm his other half, he told me I was special! You're not special, Haschwalth. At the end of the day, Yuha treated you like shit, just like all the other Sternritters. He didn't care. Although, I want to bring up something that just doesn't make any sense to me, and that is how exactly the holy selection of the Aswallen works. Okay? So, he used it the first time in the continuity of the series during 9 years ago, when Katagiri and Masaki were afflicted by it. Okay, in that situation, Masaki just had her powers ripped away from her, and then Grand Fisher killed her. Just bad timing. With Katagiri, after she got afflicted, she got knocked into a coma because she was like she had very poor health, so she got knocked into a coma. Okay. Then it was used in chapter 603 when he did his holy selection on the lower Sternritters to power up his Schutzstaffen. In that situation, whatever the light touched, as in Robert Acatron's case, got completely fucking incinerated down to the skeleton. Except the light struck Basby and Nanana, and they didn't die. They got their powers taken away. They got their Voltstendens taken away, but they didn't die. Then you had Latato and Giselle that avoided the light altogether, but they still got their powers taken away. Alright, so in that situation, the light was fatal to Robert, but not fatal to Basby or Nanana. And then he uses it again here on Haschwalth and Gerard. Gerard, it's an instant kill, which that makes sense for Gerard, because I think the only thing keeping him together at that point was Yuha's power, because all the shit that the other captains laid into him, you know, I can imagine he wouldn't be able to survive without Yuha's power at that point. But with Haschwalth, it's like, he got struck by the light, and he got his powers stolen, just like what happened with Basby. He's going to die, just like what happened with Robert, but it's not immediate. It's just like, oh, alright, I'm gonna die in a few minutes, but I'm just gonna relax. Like, how does it work? Is it, like, different for every single being? I don't understand this. If Yuha is this all-powerful god, you know, there should be, like, a universal method for when he uses the holy selection. It shouldn't be so, like, random, like, oh, okay, you might die, you might not die, you might have your power stolen, blah, 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 you know, it's just random. Anyway, so Haschwalth is just looking up at Uryu, and Uryu is just kind of like, once again, very somber. He just kind of hobbles to his freaking feet, and he's just like, alright, I'm gonna go to fight Yuha now, just, okay, I'm good. You sure you're good, bro? Oh, yeah, I'm good. I have a broken arm, and I think my foot is fractured, but I'm cool. I got him. You're losing a lot of blood there. Oh, yeah, I'm about to pass out any second, but I got the antithesis. Okay, bro, you know what? I'm gonna die anyway. Just come over here, and I'll put your wounds on me. All right, so Haschwalth offers, you know, oh, you know what? I'm gonna die anyway, and there's no point in you dying here, too, because if you go and fight Yuha the way you are now, it's just, you're gonna get wrecked. So just come over here, and I'll use my balance power, because remember, whenever Yuha uses the Holy Selection, he doesn't take away their actual ability. Like, Basby was still able to use the heat. No was still able to use his underbelly shit, but it's just they can't go in their holy forms anymore. Which is one reason I didn't really understand why they were so pissed. Like, Basby was so pissed about Yuha, like, Your Majesty, you betrayed me! Even though back in the past, Basby should have been already aware that Yuha is kind of like that. But even then, it's just like, I mean, I could still shoot fire, but he took away my wings, so fuck him! I don't, whatever. So, Uryu looks pretty shocked by this, but Haschwalth basically tells him, you know, you don't want to be left with these regrets. You know, there's something to having to be said about somebody who's going to go and follow their convictions, you know? So I think Haschwalth has a better understanding of Uryu now from after their fight and everything, and what just, and maybe on like maybe he's just putting out the front, like, you know, I'm His Majesty, I'm not betrayed, I feel worthy. Maybe he honestly does feel like he made the shitty decision. We're gonna find out in a second here. But he tells Uryu, you know, you must go and save your friends. Oh, I don't know what it is, but this one panel with Haschwalth, just the facial expression he's making is hilarious to me. Just like, oh, Uryu, go and save your friends. Somebody caption this. Someone make that into a meme, please, because I think you can come up with some pretty clever shit there. Alright, so Uryu looks back, and then they, you know, some time passes, you know, they switch wounds, you know, Haschwalth gets Uryu's wounds, and then Uryu leaves, and then Haschwalth's just kind of left there on his deathbed, just kind of staring up at the ceiling, and he's just like, you know, even if it doesn't alter or change anything, even if, you know, the wound shift doesn't, you know, matter and Uryu ends up dying anyway, even if Yuha not taking his power doesn't matter, he's taking the path he desires to take, and there's something to be said about that at the end of the day. It has its own merit, walking your own path. And there's something that also has to be said for people that are not willing to do that. The regrets they'll have and stuff like that. And at that moment, I think it's pretty much obvious that, yeah, Haschwalth realizes, you know, I made the wrong decision kind of for following Yuha, for doing all this. And just to pound it in deeper, just to make it a little bit more sad, there's a scene where Haschwalth is beginning to loosen his grip on his sword, and embedded in the hilt of his claymore is the button that Basby gave him all those years ago. We're talking like hundreds, if not maybe even 1,000 years ago. Back when they were kids, Basby was wearing that cape, and he had those 2 B buttons on his cape, and he like took one off and he tossed it over to Jugo, and he's like, you're my subordinate from now on. We're gonna be the strongest Quincy's ever. And Haschwalth, even after betraying Basby and going to align with Yuha, you know, which, that doesn't even make any sense that I'm thinking back on that now, because it's like, Jugo and Basby train for years to fight against Yuha, and then the second they meet the guy, Haschwalth's just like, screw you, Basby, I'm going with this guy. Like, I understand, like, maybe you, because, you know, Haschwalth is, like, Yuha's other half, maybe he felt something, like, in his soul, like, I can trust this man. But you think you'd still have some value in the friend that you spent 3 years training with night and day. You know, and it's not like Haschwalth's like, oh, Basby, I'm gonna join Yuha, but I'm gonna be like a double agent. I'm gonna kill him in his sleep. No, as we can see very clearly from this series, Haschwalth was very loyal to Yuha completely. But he still felt some regret for Basby. He still felt regret for what he did. And as kind of like maybe as a reminder of that, he embedded the button into his blade, you know, so he would always be reminded of the friend he betrayed all those years ago. And, yeah, so he loses his grip on his sword. We can assume that means that Haschwalth dies, and that's it. That's the end of Haschwalth's story. He's dead. Do you feel a little bit disappointed by that? I do. You know, I remember when Haschwalth was first introduced, for a good 25, 30 chapters there. We didn't even know his name, but we could tell he was a badass character. We could tell he's one of the stronger enemies in this arc. And we see him, and he's like, oh man, this guy's badass. And then he freaking cuts Ichigo's Tensuzangetsu like it's a freaking toothpick. His full-bring enhanced Tensuzangetsu like it's a toothpick. And it's like, man, he's going to be one of the final enemies. And this is the battle we get. Now, I'm not going to say the battle, I mean, against Uryu, that's perfect. You know, I can't think of a better opponent for him. Here's the thing, though. This wasn't even a real fight, okay? This wasn't like a consistent, like, fight. Here's how this went. We would get a few scenes of the battle, and then we'd cut away from it, and maybe next week we would get an update. Not every week. A lot of times it was just like 1 week. All right, we got the fight with Uryu, and Uryu gets kind of beaten down. All right, let's cut away to something else. Next week, we don't get anything. And the week after that, okay, we cut back over to Haschwalth, and now he's getting beaten down. Oh no, he flipped it. Now he's beaten down. That's how this fight went. It's been mostly dialogue, and it's never been a single chapter dedicated to that. If I could go back and say that, you know, look at all the shit Haschwalth's, you know, all the build up to this character, and be like, yeah, did you know that his final battle wasn't he wasn't even going to get a single chapter dedicated to him? It was just going to be these brief cutaway scenes, most of which included dialogue, and didn't really have any serious fighting going on. You don't get to see, you know, anything really cool. I mean, you get to see the shield, but you don't get to see, like, his, you know, holy form or anything, if he even had one. And that's pretty much it. It just seems like a letdown. I mean, yeah, you can attribute that to the end of the series and everything. I understand. I'm just saying, it doesn't matter. It's still a freaking letdown. You know, this has been a setup for what I assume to be the secondary antagonist in this freaking arc. And that's what I figured Haschwalth was going to be, secondary antagonist. Therefore, you know, right after you, his fight's going to be pretty damn cool too, and it didn't end up being that way. It was mostly dialogue, mostly just brief scenes in each chapter, cutaway, and it just broken apart. Maybe if they were all, you know, smattered together one after another, it might have something a little bit more coherent, but it just wasn't the intense fight, because their powers were like, I flip it back on you, no, I flip it back on you. I mean, that's not the kind of fight I envisioned, you know. But what do you feel about that? Do you feel satisfied with the death of Haschwalth, that that's how his story ends? I mean, I admit the last scene with, you know, I mean, he got the most backstory out of any Sternritter, along with Basby. He actually got an arc. That was, you know, interesting. So I'm not upset, like, well, we didn't ever find out about Haschwalth's past or anything. But the final battle just was not that great. So what do you feel? I'll put a poll up here in the fucking info card or something. You can let me know if you feel satisfied with Haschwalth's death. Alright, so we cut away in front of the portal. We have Rukia there, and she's just questioning how the hell can we beat somebody that has the power that Yuha has, because I'm assuming Orihime explains it to her. Orihime manages to get up. She's bleeding from the head, so, you know, Yuha probably just, like, you know, slapped her and knocked her down, and she lost consciousness. And so she pulls Tensuzangetsu out next to her, and she's like, I'm sorry, Ichigo, I couldn't heal Tensuzangetsu, or I couldn't reject it, I couldn't reverse it. Rukia is still trying to rack her brain, trying to figure out how the hell we're even going to be able to fight him, but Renji has an idea. He just grabs Ichigo, and he's like, get your ass up, and he drags Ichigo to his feet, and he's just like, we don't have that luxury to think about this shit, we gotta go after him. Okay, Renji, Renji, that is by far the stupidest thing you have ever said in this entire series. Alright? I mean, listen, buddy. I understand where you're coming from. It's just like, you know, it's alright, we can't think of a way to beat him, but we'll just sit here until we're blue in the face. Let's just go and we'll figure it out as we go along. Alright? That is the stupidest plan ever. Alright, I mean, despite all the fact, like, we got our friends here, we'll figure out something. Have you seen the shit this guy can do? I mean, this isn't like just a traditional enemy that you can just go and just like, I'm just gonna hit him a lot and he'll fall down. We'll come up with something as long as we're together. You know, Renji, you're kind of a dumb shit. I understand maybe you're trying to motivate Ichigo, you're just trying to get him to stand up and like, come on, get back to your senses. You're no use to us like this. But just getting him back up on his feet and just walking through the damn portal is just instant suicide. And then you don't have Ichigo there still looking all somber and depressed, like, guys, there's no point. Can we just go home? I just want to go to bed. We can't beat him. There's no point. Ow! I got stabbed. Who gives a shit? I don't care anymore. I got stabbed. Whatever. Alright, so let's play a little quiz game, shall we? I like to call it, Who Stabbed Ichigo? Alright, has the character died before? Yes. Alright. Does he have black hair? Yeah, okay, good. Does he usually have sort of like a apathetic, I don't really give a shit about anything face? Gotcha! It's Ukiura! Shit! No, it turns out it's Tsukishima, looking like it's just much of a smug prick as he always did. What are you trying to pull, you smug prick? Oh, hey, I just said that. Good. Me and Ichigo are on the same panel there. We get it. We get it. We get it. We get it. Right, so now the Fullbringers are back in action. If you're wondering where the hell they came from and how the hell, you know, they got at this point in the Soul Palace, we get to see a little panel there where Yukio is hanging out, so it's very clear that Yukio used his magical black box to give a lift to Tsukishima and Ginjo. Giriko was with them last time too, but I'm not really upset that he's not there once again, because it's like, you know, end of the series, if Kubo's gonna have to like stretch things a little thin and be like, you know what, yeah, I'm just gonna write Giriko out of the series. He just decided to stay at Kukaku's and drink some tea with her. Maybe they're having sex right now. I don't know. Maybe guys with mustaches and one eye was like Kukaku's type. You know, she was missing an arm. Maybe they're perfect for each other. Now you have that mental image in your head. Anyway, you know, they're all freaking out, like, because, you know, this is a character, this is a villain that has psychologically fucked up Ichigo, even more than Aizen did. Okay, that does kind of suck that instead of getting Aizen, you know, helping out in the final battle, it looks like we're gonna get Tsukishima, which is kind of like Diet Aizen. But anyway, so Diet Aizen explains to Ichigo, Ginjo said we came to help you, so I really don't have any complaints, because Tsukishima and Ginjo, they're kind of like, they're sort of like these two guys that just only have each other. You know, Ginjo to Tsukishima is kind of like his older brother kind of figure, so it's just like, well, he said we're doing this, so we're doing this. And then that's when Ginjo steps up and he's like, no, I didn't say that. What I said was, we came to repay our debt to him. Okay, so it looks like everything's easy peasy now. I mean, they're dead, so I guess there's really no reason for them to hold a grudge anymore. I'm like, well, you know, you killed us, but whatever. It was kind of our own fault. We're in the Soul Society now. Which, by the way, I'm curious, how did they get their old clothes back? I mean, Fullbring also works when you're in the Soul Society. That's interesting to know. We didn't know that. But, yeah, so if Fullbring still works after you die, and you apparently can get your own clothes in the, I guess you get to keep your own clothes in the Soul Society. Because I just assumed that when you died, you just get dumped naked in the middle of, like, Rukon District 72. And it's just like, alright, here's your crappy, torn, dirty kimono. Help us till the fields, brother. You know, like, I thought that's what normally happened. Yeah, so Ginjo and Tsukishima, they're on the Ichigo side right now, and as we recall, Tsukishima stabbed Ichigo with his Fullbring Book of the End. And Book of the End allows to implant himself, like it's a bookmark originally. It allows himself to insert his presence into the past of a person or object. And he does this to implant the notion of your sword has not been broken into Ichigo's psyche, which results in Orihime being able to completely heal Tensa Zangetsu, or her Santen Keshu now works. Now, there's I came up with a whole video explaining how this works, or my take on it. I would go ahead and watch that one. I'll put that up there in an info card as well. It took about 15 minutes to explain. That's why I didn't want to do it right here in the review about everything. I do a little recap on Tsukishima's power and, you know, my reasoning for how he was able to heal his Ichigo's Tensa Zangetsu. I should bring up one thing, though, that a lot of people brought up in that video, because I mentioned in the video that Tsukishima does not have the power to do past manipulation, it's manipulating memories. And everyone, a lot of people, I should have brought it up in the video, it was my bad. I fucked up, I'm sorry. But they said in the comments, like, no, he does have the ability to manipulate the past. Remember when he was fighting Byakuya, and he cut the ground, and he set those traps up? You know, how can he not have the ability to manipulate the past? That makes no sense. I'm like, okay, I forgot about that moment. However, here's my rebuttal to that, okay? I want to ask you a simple question, alright? At the very least, he can do both. Because whenever he cut Orihime, and he used his Book of the End on Orihime back in the Last Agent arc, what did he do? He replaced Sora, Orihime's older brother, with himself. Now I ask you, if he has the ability of past manipulation, where he can just literally change recorded events to his liking, then that means he erased Sora Inoue from fucking history. He replaced him with himself. And I simply refuse to believe, on any level, that this fucker right here has such an OP ability that he is able to just erase people's existence from history. Don't you think that might be a little bit too overkill? So at the very least, you have to say he can do both. He can manipulate the past of objects and people, but he can also fuck with memories. There has to be a limit on this shit. Because if he can just cut things or people and just change recorded history, there was no point of him fucking around with, hey, Ginjo, let's cut Uryu and let's have this master plan trying to get Ichigo. You know, like, you could have literally just walked up to Ichigo and just stabbed, and then the entire last agent arc would have lasted, like, one chapter. Alright, I understand you need to make a story tell, but yeah, there has to be a limit on his power, there has to be a cap at somewhere, and he has to be able to manipulate memories as well as manipulating the past as well. His power's really screwy, if nothing else. And I feel like maybe Kubo might be stretching it a little bit more just to kind of make it more efficient for this final battle because we're nearing the end. He'd be like, alright, I'm gonna maybe stretch Tsukishima's Book of the End a little bit so it can fix his Bankai now. But I cover all this in more detail in the video, so you go check that out. The past and future, Tsukishima versus Yuha, I cover all that stuff there. Okay, so, Tsukishima's power, along with Orihime's rejection, manages to completely repair Tensa Zangetsu back to its former glory, and Tsukishima just strikes a very triumphant sneer, like, well then, I guess we can call the debt repaid. We're square now, right? Now, I don't know if that means, like, alright, I repaid your debt, Ginjo said it, so I'm not helping you any further, this is where we get off, I was only here to fix your sword, bye, peeps! I'm hoping that's not the case, because that just seems like, you know, that just seems like, oh, okay, well, that's the only reason I kept them around is to do this one thing. All right, they're gone again. You know, whatever. I mean, I don't like Tsukishima, but Ginjo I was pretty cool with. It'd be cool maybe if Ginjo could help out. Tsukishima, you can go and just hide and Yukio's black bots. But if Ginjo could go and maybe he's got his Shinigami powers back, that'd be pretty cool to see him in action again. I'd be fine with that. Well, anyway, last scene of the chapter, we have Ichigo, who, he resumed his confidence. I'm also assuming it's because Tsukishima altered his past, his memory, and he, like, implanted that it's not broken. He basically removed all of Ichigo's depression, you know, because, you know, it's like, oh no, we can do this. There isn't no hope. Actually, Tsukishima, you be making a fucking boatload of money. You know, you shouldn't be screwing around with Ginjo and laying fucking execution, you know, hiding out in apartment buildings or whatever. You know how much money you would make if you went around to, like, depressed people and just, like, stab them with the sword and be like, you know, you're no longer depressed, you're no longer depressed, you're no longer depressed. Or, you know, like, if he can manipulate past, then why not? Like, you don't have cancer, you don't have AIDS, like, you never had sex with that woman, you're clean, you know? I don't know, it just seems a more practical use of your power, you know? Oh, well, Tsukishima's an asshole, so why not, right? Okay, so, and he kind of is. The only reason he's helping out right now is because Ginjo told him to. But anyway, last scene in the chapter, Ichigo, his confidence is resumed, the glint is back in his eyes, as Gin Ichimaru would say. He picks up Tensa Zangetsu and does a triumphant, hell yeah! And that's where the chapter ends. Alright, so, also, one thing, really quick, people have been asking, you know, what about Ichigo's Shinigami powers? He had his Quincy and his Hollow powers removed by Yuha, but what about his Shinigami powers? The fact that he even still has his Bankai in front of him should prove he still has Shinigami powers. You know, and the way, hey, this is a fucking, I want to say, retcon? I don't know. Maybe it is, because up to this point, it's been mentioned by numerous people, even by Ichigo, that his Hollow and his Shinigami powers are the same thing. They melded together and they became his own power. Now, maybe Yuha had enough power to just rip them apart and unbind them. If anybody had the power to do that, that'd be Yuha. Maybe he didn't take away the actual power. Maybe he just emptied Ichigo's tank. You know, he just like, I'm just gonna, you know, drain you down to zero, but you'll still have the potential for the power. It's just that you're drained. You know, maybe he did something like that. But I'm just saying, you know, if Kubo does that, like he's saying all of a sudden, oh, by the way, the Shinigami powers, those were separate. No, that's bullshit. They weren't. You've said multiple times they were part of the Hollow powers. But I would say maybe, I wouldn't call it an ass pull if Yuha just had enough strength to just, like, separate them. I don't know why he wouldn't just take all of them, but maybe he separated them, maybe he just drained him, maybe he didn't, like, take them away. You know, maybe something like that. But yeah, so that's the end of the chapter. Next chapter, I assume we're all gonna move forward through the gates. I hope at least, I hope in this entire ending chapter mess, we get at least something with the people below. If we get something with Izuru and Aizen and all the other captains after they fight Gerard. It doesn't have to be like, we're all going together, but it has to be like, just give us something. Because I don't want this to be the last time we saw Aizen in the Bleach series. Just sitting in his chair, you know, minding his own business, not doing anything, just watching the Flamingo apocalypse unfold. I really don't want that to be the last time we see Aizen in the series. Give us at least one more chapter with him, okay? You know, if you give us one more chapter that just includes everybody just to wrap it up and maybe like a post-chapter, you know, I hope at least a data book is released or something that, you know, fills us in for all this. You know, just give us something, you know. But anyway, yeah, that's the end of the chapter. Ichigo's got his Bankai back. We're rushing, I would say, but, you know, that should be par for the course at this point. There's not even any use in complaining about rushing at this point where we are right now in the series. But yeah, so if we're going along with the logic that we only have 5 weeks left and we only have 4 chapters remaining then. So, hope you guys are ready for it. Yeah! Hell yeah!